Hey everybody, the 14th Amendment, this birthright citizenship thing, it was written for the children of slaves, not for anchor babies.
Step in because I see a lot of black people saying, well, they can't deport black people because we here. Honey, I know you don't think they're building all of these detention centers for immigrants.
Birthright citizenship being upheld is great. I don't even understand why this was even debatable except for white supremacy, which again ruins everything in this country.
This was a huge win for the soul of the country. Well, what's left of it. And a giant loss for the MAGA demons trying to possess that soul. I actually can't believe it happened.
Hello. Welcome back to the channel this morning. Yesterday, the Supreme Court handed down a decision, and then this country lost its mind. MAGA was furious. Progressives were celebrating. Black Americans were asking what was coming next. FBA were saying, see, America always finds a way to protect everybody else before it protects us. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody had an opinion. Everybody had a hot take declaring victory or disaster. Okay? It's been a wild ride this past couple hours.
Hey everybody, the 14th Amendment, this birthright citizenship thing, it was written for the children of slaves, not for anchor babies.
Step in because I see a lot of black people saying, well, they can't deport black people because we here. Honey, I know you don't think they're building all of these detention centers for immigrants.
Birthright citizenship being upheld is great. I don't even understand why this was even debatable except for white supremacy, which again ruins everything in this country.
This was a huge win for the soul of the country. Well, what's left of it. And a giant loss for the MAGA demons trying to possess that soul.
I had to play that again. I just had to play it again. Okay. Yeah. I had to play it again. Did y'all actually read what the Supreme Court decided? Did they actually read it? Because after I sat down and started reading the opinions, instead of just scrolling through the headlines and watching people yell at each other, I realized something. Most people ain't even arguing about the same thing. Some people think the Supreme Court protected birthright citizenship. Some people think the Supreme Court destroyed birthright citizenship. Some people think black Americans are about to lose their citizenship. Some people think this is the biggest victory for immigration in American history. None of those people are talking about the same legal question. That's what's fascinating. Not immigration, not Republicans, not Democrats, the hysteria. Because we become a country where the reaction spreads faster than the facts. Before anybody slows down to understand what happened, we've already picked up a side. We've already chosen our enemy. We've already started fighting. Okay? But here's what really caught my attention. The Supreme Court did issue that final ruling. But Kavanaugh left the door open to the amendment being adjusted through the Constitution. So it may or may not be over. Yet while everybody was arguing on what they thought happened, there was another part of the story that almost nobody seemed to be talking about. 4 Supreme Court justices signaled that they were willing to move in a direction that could fundamentally change how the citizenship clause is understood. 4 Supreme Court justices voted to overturn the birthright citizenship. That's worth paying attention to. Not because birthright citizenship disappeared yesterday. It didn't. Not because black Americans woke up without citizenship. They didn't. but because when 4 members of the highest court in the land appear willing to rethink one of the most important constitutional protections ever in the future, that's crazy. And it's a conversation worth having, right? And as a Black woman, I don't hear the 14th Amendment the way people hear it. When I hear the 14th Amendment, I don't just hear constitutional law. I hear the amendment that overturned the Dred Scott decision. I hear the amendment that finally settled the question of whether people who look like me could ever truly belong to this country as full citizens. That's why I take this seriously. But I also take the misinformation seriously, because I watched people scare themselves over things that didn't even happen while almost ignoring the things that actually should have their attention. This morning, I don't want to have another immigration debate. I don't want to spend 30 minutes arguing political slogans either. I want to talk about something bigger. I want to talk about why one Supreme Court decision produced 4 completely different meltdowns in this country. Why MAGA lost their goddamn mind. Why some Black Americans became genuinely afraid, and why some FBI voices saw this through a completely goofy lens. Why social media turned confusion into certainty before most people had a way to read the opinion or a time to read the opinion. In this video, I think you're going to see that the biggest story wasn't the Supreme Court decision. The biggest story was everybody's reaction to this whole thing. And I've never seen anything quite like yesterday. Everybody was waiting on bated breath with that doggone decision. Bated breath. Like, what the hell was going on with the decision? Let me play this videotape. Hold on. Let me play y'all videotape. I have all these goofy people on my tape. Okay, yeah. Let me play this. Play, y'all. Hold on. I'll play it.
This is why I keep saying we are at a crucial. This is why I keep saying we are at a crucial crossroads for what Black identity is in this nation. And folks are going to be forced to choose. Am I Black or am I American?
Is anybody else legitimately shocked by the Supreme Court's ruling today on birthright citizenship and striking down his horrendously stupid, unconstitutional executive order for months and months? It was like over a year ago, damn near. I'm actually shocked that the Supreme Court did the right thing. And what does that tell us, by the way? What is that telling us about the society that we live in? That tells us that over the last 10 years, we have grown so accustomed to this administration or just even the Supreme Court when they have a hand in things. Any worst case scenario you could possibly pick out, we've been pav-fucking-loved into accepting the fact that whatever the worst scenario is, that's going to be the thing that plays out. That the Supreme Court will back this, or they'll do this or that. So when something actually reasonable happens, it's almost a shock to your damn system.
Right. And I mean, I got up this morning, I was going...
It's not a popular policy. End birthright citizenship for children born to immigrants illegally here. Look at this. Just 35% support. The clear majority, 53% oppose. And I've looked at multiple polls, looked at the question, asked multiple different ways. If anything, this undersells the opposition by a little bit. If you don't, in fact, mention for children born to immigrants here legally and just ask about ending birthright citizenship, the opposition shoots all the way up to about 70%. But this 53% is clearly indicative of a country that does not want to end birthright citizenship. Simply put, this is not a popular policy, and if Donald Trump pushes policies like this, his honeymoon period will squeeze and be even shorter than it was back in 2017.
Ain't that the truth? So, by the end of the day, I felt like 4 completely different Supreme Courts had issued 4 different completely different decisions. I mean, scrolling through social media, I'm thinking, what opinion did all of y'all read? Because everybody cannot be talking about the same thing. The first place I stopped was over in MAGA world, in the goofy world. I know some of y'all belong to that world, but that's a goofy ass world, boy. And let me tell you, they were hot. I mean, they weren't just disappointed. They were furious. They were calling this another betrayal. They were attacking the Supreme Court. They were attacking Amy Coney Barrett. They were acting like the Supreme Court had completely abandoned Donald Trump. And I'm sitting there listening to all this crap thinking, wait a minute. Didn't y'all spend years telling us, you MAGA folks, spent years telling us this is one of the greatest conservative courts in modern history? Now, all of a sudden, they're liberals because they didn't give you exactly what you wanted yesterday. That's how fast this thing turned around. Then I leave that side of the internet and go over somewhere else, and now I see people celebrating. Folks are talking like this thing is over, like birthright citizenship has been permanently protected forever and we can all go home. What y'all forget is that 14th Amendment has 3 prongs to it. It has 3 issues to it that you can deal with. The birthright citizenship is just one prong. You got equal protection under the law, and you have the other. You have 3 different prongs under there that they can attack. They can attack 2 of those prongs. They can make a constitutional amendment. They can change it through Congress if they get enough votes. All of these things can be overturned and changed. Okay. And they're celebrating like this presidency, like this Trump presidency hasn't went against the grain of what the Americans have wanted since he got into office. He is the type of president that will do stuff illegally. They don't even have to listen to the Supreme Court. They can ignore that. They didn't ignore the laws before. They didn't ignore the Supreme Court before. What makes you think, why would he ignore the Supreme? Why wouldn't he ignore it now? Okay. People over there celebrating, thinking it's over. It may not be over. I don't know, but this is a big thing for the Trump administration. It may not be over. Listen. Okay. Who knows what they plan to do in response to this? You know it's not over. Okay. Then they ask a question. How many people have birthright citizenship? How many countries do? Plenty of countries. The yellow countries that you see on the screen, they have birthright citizenship. They have it. There's plenty of countries. I think
Birthright citizenship should be taken away because now it's being abused by immigrants who are coming to this country and having kids and then taking their kids back to their country and raising them. That way their kids have rights and U.S. citizenship under the 14th Amendment. But before, when it was created, it wasn't an issue and immigrants weren't using birth tourism to allow their kids to have rights. So now that it's becoming an issue, they're trying to remove it, not to hurt anyone, but to protect the United States in this country.
Keep the birthright citizenship. Just a slap in the face to the Black American. Ancestors fought for y'all to be free, and we gonna give this to everybody else. And then therefore that shit take all y'all benefits that we fought for. That's why it's hard for our Black Americans to get the benefits that they ancestors fought for. And that's why you hear these foreigners, oh, they just baby mamas, baby daddies, they're just gang bangers, they're just drug dealers. Because those benefits and things that those people could have got that could have detoured them from being those things were taken by people that didn't deserve it. This is so-called Black Americans' birthright. This is their birthright. This shows you that Trump is on the side of the Black American, and you see where the real racist is, instead of everybody want to point the finger at Trump saying that he's a racist. You see who the real racists are. They know the truth. Everybody knows the truth, and they know who we are. They know what was done. They know why the 14th Amendment was written. It was only written to give Black people the same rights that white people had. It wasn't even no foreigners. Because they're saying it happened over 128 years ago, they're going to keep it. It happened 128 years ago because of what was done to us and how we fought to fix that. Our ancestors fought to fix it. They didn't fight to fix it for everybody else. This was done for us. Continue to push those documents for the class action lawsuit, because it's bigger than the class action lawsuit. It's way bigger than the class action. It's not just about money. It's about land. It's about truth. It's about what happened to us and who we are. It's about identity. It's about everything. They reclassify American Indians to Negro, color, and black. Those Negro, color, and black people are our great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers. And those great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, their parents were the people of the owners of this land. This birthright citizenship being struck down is deeper than this.
I can't believe this Supreme Court did the right thing. It's unbelievable. They actually followed the Constitution instead of just making shit up. You know, like giving presidents absolute immunity, just pulling that out of thin air. But they actually did the right thing. So that's pretty cool. And there are a lot of people in the United States who are now protected, who don't have to worry about being ripped away from the only country they've ever known by a bunch of MAGA demons who don't care about anything but themselves and destroying the country. That's all that they care about. MAGA will never make America great again. They don't know the first thing about that. All they know.
See, then I go over to the other side, and then I hear the goofy FBA people, not necessarily all goofy FBA, but FBA is in terms of jealousy, because that's the only way I can look at it. You get a leg up, and then you get mad because somebody else comes behind you. That's jealousy. That you would take the ladder away and be worried about other people. The 14th Amendment doesn't nullify anything any kind of benefits that come our way. I don't understand what's going on. One side thinks America's falling apart. The other side thinks democracy just won the Super Bowl. How can both of those things be true from the exact same opinion? Then the black side, I went over there and it was like, I don't even understand what's going on with you people. Scared next. This is the black citizenship next. X, Y, and Z. Now, before anybody starts laughing about all these goofy questions, because our history is different. When your ancestors had to fight just to be recognized as citizens in this country, conversations about the 14th Amendment hit differently black people than it does white people. We don't hear the amendment the way other people hear it. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. But then I saw something else that really caught my attention. I started listening to some of these FBA voices, and they weren't reacting out of fear as much as frustration. Like this one dude, like you just heard this dude, the attitude was America's ready to fight tooth and nail over somebody else's rights. But every time descendants of American slaves ask for something, suddenly everybody wants to have a debate about it. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's not the point. What I'm saying is that it was a completely different emotional reaction than what I had just watched from the MAGA crowd. And it was completely different from the people celebrating on the left. That's when it finally hit me. Nobody was really reacting to the opinion. They were reacting to what they believed the opinion meant. MAGA heard immigration. Progressives heard Trump. Black Americans heard the 14th Amendment. FBA heard America's unfinished promise. Everybody was filtering the same Supreme Court decision through our own life experiences, their own policies, the politics, history, their own fears and irrational thoughts. And honestly, that's when I realized I needed to make this video, because everybody was arguing, but I wasn't sure exactly what was people arguing about or what part of the argument they had. That's the part that bothered me. Everybody has an answer. Very few people have actually slowed down long enough to ask the most important question. What did the Supreme Court actually decide? Now, here's why I think the entire conversation went off the rails for a lot of people. Because after listening to everybody yell at each other for the better part of the day, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, you name it. You know what? Let me stop listening to everybody else and go see what the Supreme Court actually said. That's what I did. And y'all know, that's when I realized something. Most of us weren't even arguing about the same thing. We were arguing about what we thought the court said. A lot of people had those three prongs mixed up: due process, birthright citizenship. They had all of that mixed up together. Okay, all completely different things. So if you listened to social media yesterday, you would have thought the Supreme Court had either saved birthright citizenship forever or completely abolished it forever. Some people didn't even know. Neither one of those things happened completely, honestly. The court didn't wake up yesterday and say birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. They didn't say it was settled or over either, because you can listen to Kavanaugh's response, the Supreme Court Kavanaugh's response, his dissent or have dissent. And he said, well, it could be changed. If Congress wants to change it, Congress has the right to change it through the Congress. They can change it. And I still can't get past the fact that 4 Supreme Court justices decided that they were going to vote against birthright citizenship. Is the game over? People celebrating? Are people panicking? Do we have more to worry about? Okay. Maybe there's a bigger constitutional fight that's coming along. We don't know. Yesterday was important, but we don't know. Absolutely. Nobody knows, because while everybody was arguing over what they thought, I kept looking at the votes in the House, in the Senate. That's all they need is 3. That's all they need is 2/3 of the states and 2/3 of the House and the Senate in order for them to change that birthright citizenship. Okay. That's all it takes. And I'm not saying all it takes is easy. I'm saying the possibility is there. That's all we need is somebody smarter than Trump, more cunning than Trump, more determined than Trump, and this can happen. Okay? It can happen. 4 justices signaled this conversation ain't over with. You can agree or disagree. Okay? But everybody lost their mind yesterday. Okay? Everybody. We don't need to be arguing over headlines or clickbait or TikTok or anything else. We got to figure out what we're going to do in this country. That I showed you that one guy saying 53% of Americans say they don't want birthright citizenship overturned. Most of us don't. We do not want the Constitution overturned. You interpret the Constitution. That's why we hired the Supreme Court, to interpret the Constitution for us. Okay. That's what we hired them for. That's what they did yesterday. It is what it is. So we have to move forward with what we're doing, what we have to do. It's not anywhere near Black Americans. Okay. We're not going to get thrown out of the country. It has nothing to do with us. Now that's mostly settled, because you're not going to get 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and 2/3 of the states to agree to get rid of birthright citizenship. You're just not. So for all intents and purposes, that's a decades, year-long fight. And Trump is not going to overturn it in his lifetime. So you might as well just piss on it. It's not going to happen. Okay? It's just not going to happen. Okay, and it wasn't just about immigration. If this was only about immigration, we wouldn't be arguing over one of the most important amendments ever added to the Constitution. We'd be arguing about border security, asylum, visas. Instead, we're talking about the 14th Amendment. And as a Black woman, I can hear those words that way everybody else hears them too. So when some people hear the 14th Amendment, they hear politics and history. We got a long way to go before people start getting kicked out because the birthright citizenship clause has been overturned. Okay. You also have to understand where the 14th Amendment came from. The Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott decision said that black people were not full citizens. That was the Dred Scott decision. The 14th Amendment rectified that decision. The Dred Scott decision. It was rectified by the 14th Amendment. Due process, birthright citizenship, and I forgot the third prong. But that's why we got the 14th Amendment. They're not about to overturn that. Okay? They're not about to overturn that. But that happened through the Supreme Court too. The Supreme Court came up with that decision that said slaves weren't Americans. Okay. But it was rectified. It had nothing to do with until the Supreme Court interpreted it to deal with other immigrants and such like that. They established that it does pertain to immigrants. It does pertain to people born here, anchor babies. They interpreted that yesterday and said it does involve them. So now we have to deal with the fallout of that. Okay. And that's crazy, because if it would have been overturned, imagine waking up one morning and the highest court in the country tells you that it no longer matters that you were born here. No matter how hard you worked, no matter what you contributed, you don't belong here. That's what immigrants and black people would have been facing. The Civil War ended, hundreds of thousands of people died, slavery has finally been abolished. And do you know what some states tried to do? They immediately started passing black codes. Different laws for black people, different rights for black people, different opportunities for black people. It was slavery by another name. So Congress finally said enough. We're going to settle this once and for all. We're going to put citizenship into the Constitution itself so politicians can't keep moving the goalposts every election cycle. That's why the 14th Amendment was written. It wasn't some random amendment that got added because Congress had nothing to do. It was written because America had to correct one of the greatest injustices in its history. That's why I get uncomfortable when I hear people casually talking about changing the 14th fucking Amendment. If it doesn't have anything to do with you, you need to stand the fuck down. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you can't debate immigration. You absolutely can. I'm not saying you can't disagree about border policy. You absolutely can. But don't pretend like you're only talking about immigration when you're asking the country to rethink one of the amendments that finally recognized black people as full American citizens. Those are two different conversations. And here's something else that really stood out to me. I keep hearing people describe themselves as constitutional originals. Okay, let's talk about that. Originalism says that you interpret the Constitution according to its original public hearing or meaning. That's the philosophy. So here's my question to you, originalist. If you're so committed to following the original understanding of the Constitution, why are we suddenly trying to reinterpret one of the amendments whose purpose was very clear? The whole reason the 14th Amendment exists was to overturn Dred Scott and establish a constitutional rule for citizenship after the Civil War. So if we're truly talking about original meaning, shouldn't we start with why the people who wrote it? That's the contradiction I can't get past. Now, maybe somebody has different legal argument. I don't know. Fine. Let's have that discussion. But let's at least be honest about what we're debating. Because I don't think this is just about immigration anymore. I think this is about competing visions in America. One vision says the 14th Amendment settled the question of citizenship. Another vision says maybe it didn't settle it as completely as we believe for the past 150, 60 years. That's a huge constitutional question. Now, let me take it a step further and say this. Nobody is talking about the practical side of it. Let's just assume for a second that birthright citizenship is eventually narrowed from the birthright citizenship. Forget politics, Republicans, Democrats, think about ordinary Americans. Right now, if you're born here, your birth certificate is one of the key documents that helps establish your identity and citizenship through your life. Use it. You use it to get a passport. You use it when you deal with government agencies. It becomes one of your foundational records. Now imagine a different system. How does the government determine who's a citizen, who is not? Do they have to verify your parents' legal status at the time you're born? What happens if records are missing? What happens if agencies disagree? What happens if mistakes are made? Do you realize how much government that would require if they had overturned the 14th Amendment? That's the irony that keeps making me shake my head. The same people who tell us government is too big, government asks too many questions, government has too much paperwork, could end up supporting a system that requires even more governmental paperwork, more verification, more record keeping, more bureaucracy if they overturn the 14th Amendment. That's not a small government, that's bigger government. And whether you agree with it or not, policy or not, I think it's a fair question to ask. How do you actually administer a system like that in a country with hundreds of millions of people if you overturn the 14th Amendment? Because slogans are easy, governing is very, very hard. And that's why I think this conversation is much bigger than immigration. It's about history and citizenship. It's about constitutional interpretation. It's about what kind of country we want to live in. And once I realized that, I finally understood why one Supreme Court opinion produced so many emotions and bullshit. Because people weren't just arguing over a legal case. They were arguing over their vision of America. Their vision of America. What did all these meltdowns that I found on the internet reveal? Okay. It wasn't the Supreme Court. It wasn't Donald Trump. It wasn't the 14th Amendment. It was us. Because yesterday didn't just reveal where this court might be headed. Yesterday revealed who we were. It showed me just how divided this country has become. Not because we disagree. Americans have always disagreed. We all disagree. It showed me that we're not even having the same conversation anymore. We're all looking at the same thing, but we're seeing completely different realities. Just like that Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Some people saw murder. Some people saw self-defense. Same thing with Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. Some people saw murder. Some people saw self-defense. We're all seeing completely different realities. MAGA looked at that opinion, the birthright citizenship opinion, and immediately started talking about immigration, the border, American sovereignty. You ain't American. Progressives looked at the exact same opinion and started celebrating because they thought they had beaten Trump. Yeah, we got one over on Trump. Yes, indeed. That's his big signature policy. We got his ass. Black Americans looked at it and immediately went back to our history. We started asking ourselves whether the amendment that finally recognized us as a citizen was somehow under attack or would continue to be under attack. Then you had the FBA voices looking at the exact same opinion saying, here we go again. America is moving hell on earth to help somebody else, but they don't want to help the Black Americans. Now, here's what's interesting. None of these reactions came out of nowhere, of course. Every one of them came from people's life experience. MAGA's reaction came from years of hearing the immigration is the biggest threat facing America. I don't know how y'all got that understanding, but apparently y'all believe it. Progressives reacted because they spent years fighting Donald Trump in the courts. Because every time you turn around, you think you got Donald Trump over a barrel, somehow he slips out of it. Black Americans reacted because we know our history. We know there was a time when this country argued over whether we even belonged here or even whether we were human. And FBA reacted from generations of feeling like every other group's problems somehow get addressed before ours. Whether you agree with any of those perspectives or not, at least understand where they come from. But here's where I think we all have to be careful. Your life experiences should help you understand the world. They shouldn't replace the facts. Because if we're not careful, we stop saying whether what's actually happening and start saying only what we expect to happen. And I think that's exactly what happened yesterday. Everybody heard the opinion they were already prepared to hear. Nobody stopped long enough to ask whether that was the opinion the court actually wrote. Now, let me say something directly to Black folks for a minute. I understand the fear. I really do, because our history teaches us that rights can be taken away. Our history teaches us that progress is not always permanent. Our history teaches us that when somebody starts talking about changing the rules, we better pay attention. So yeah, pay attention, study the case, follow what happens next. But don't let fear become your source of information. Fear is supposed to tell you to investigate. It's supposed to become the investigation. And to my FBA brothers and sisters, I understand the frustration too. There are legitimate connections, conversations that have to be had about this reparation thing, about wealth, about the promises this country has never fulfilled for descendants of slaves. Those conversations deserve to happen. But don't let the frustration convince you that the 14th Amendment somehow belongs to somebody else. It doesn't. That amendment belongs to our history, our Black history too. It exists because the country had to finally admit that Black people were born here as citizens. That's our constitutional history. That's part of our inheritance. And to many conservative viewers, if your concern is immigration, then let's debate immigration. Let's debate border security. Let's debate asylum policy. Let's debate visas. Those are legitimate policy discussions. But don't pretend that's the only conversation we're having when the debate requires reopening one of the most important constitutional amendments ever written. Let's be honest about the size of the conversation we're having, because this is not just about the borders anymore. This is about citizenship. This is about constitutional interpretation. This is about America's identity. And maybe that's why people became so emotional, because underneath all the politics, this wasn't really about babies. It wasn't really about immigration or Donald Trump. It was about belonging here. Who belongs here? Who gets to call themselves an American? Who gets the protection of the Constitution? Those questions have haunted this country since the very beginning. The 14th Amendment answered those questions after the Civil War. Now we're debating whether those answers should change. That's why people are emotional and upset, not because they're irrational, because they're bringing generations of history, politics, and personal experience into this conversation. The problem isn't that we all reacted. The problem is that too many of us reacted before we understood what we were reacting to. And that's a lesson every one of us ought to learn before we have another constitutional fight. Okay? Where do we go from here? Despite everything you heard over the last 24 hours, okay, this fight is not over. Yesterday wasn't the final chapter. Yesterday was probably the beginning of one. And that's why I think people need to stop arguing about what they hope happens and start paying attention to what probably will happen. This case is going to keep moving through chipping away. They're going to start chipping away at stuff. Chipping away here. Making it, you gotta be the Save the Voting Act. SAVE Act is a part of that chipping away. Okay, that's a part of chipping away. They could chip away at anything that they want to chip away at. Okay, and this is the way it is. This is the way our country works. There were 4 votes that were willing, 4 SCOTUSes that were willing to move in a direction that can fundamentally change how one of the most important constitutional amendments in American history is understood. 4 conservative judges said no, or was it yes or no? 4 judges went against the decision. And that's wild to me that you would even think just that easy the 14th Amendment could have been struck down. Okay. And it's going to be debated as to why that shit wasn't 9-0 or 7-2. Why did it pass by the skin on the teeth? Okay. That's crazy. Okay. That's crazy. And then we got to live with the fact that the Constitution can be interpreted however these Supreme Court people want it to be interpreted. It can go either way. We were hoping that it went the way that it went, that they could leave it alone for now, because the chances of it being overturned are almost slim to none. Okay? Almost slim to none. Okay? Because you have to have 2/3 of the Senate, 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the states in order to change what the Supreme Court did yesterday. Okay, 2/3. And that probably will never happen, not in any of our lifetimes. So you just can forget about people. You just forget about arguing about birthright citizenship. It's over. It's over. Okay. It's not going to change. It's already, once it's settled, you don't go in and resettle it. You have to bring another argument to the birthright citizenship. And you can't, and they don't have another argument to bring to that birthright citizenship. Okay. They already tried to challenge the due process because they wanted to because of that Garcia guy. They challenged the due process. Every person that hits, person within the board, with these borders, have due process. Every person that's born on American soil is an American. And 9 times out of 10, as long as you don't have that 2/3, 2/3, and 2/3, it's going to stay that way in the Constitution. Okay? All of that's going to stay that way. So the decision yesterday was effectively, the decision is null and void. You can chip away at other things, but that's the one thing that's going to stay into place. Okay, unless it just be some radical voting where America votes for Republicans up and down every ticket. And that's not going to happen. Okay, that's not going to happen. So yesterday I say it was a good decision because stop messing with the Constitution. Stop messing with the Constitution. Okay, I want to interpret the Constitution the way it's been interpreted. Not fiddle-faddle about X, Y, and Z. We can ask questions. We can challenge the courts. We can read things. We can challenge politicians, cable news, influencers, TikTok. We can do all of that. But we also have to pay attention. We have to watch this case. We have to watch cases similar to this. Okay? Because we never know what a judge, or we never know what this administration is going to pull out their ass or pull out their hat. We never know what they want to do. Okay. Every turn they're getting hit in the face every turn with losses about this immigration. And people keep saying, and there was one person who said to me last night, y'all didn't have no problem when Obama did it. Obama didn't do what Trump did. Obama wasn't in Congress asking for money, upping the money every 5 minutes. Obama didn't have people dying in custody like that. Obama didn't deport people like they're inhumane, that they didn't give people due process. Obama didn't do it like that. People got due process. People were treated as humane as they could be. People keep saying, oh, Obama, he built those cages and blah, blah, blah. He built those cages to keep those kids in from harm's way, not to keep them in there to punish them, to keep the predators out of those cages. Just like the predators keep going into these detention facilities and hurting these young girls. Oh, Obama, he deported kids without their parents. The only way the Obama administration had kids without parents is because they came over the border without their parents. They didn't round those kids up without their parents here in the country. Most of them didn't happen that way. It happened when they were coming over the border by themselves. And sure enough, they built cages, but they did far less damage. All over the news, protests, ICE hurting American citizens. Obama didn't have that when he was deporting people, and he deported more people. There's several things that Obama did differently than what Trump is doing. There's no comparison. Okay? Cruelty is the point of this administration. Cruelty is the point. There wasn't a point in the Obama administration. Cruelty was not the point. Deporting people without due process was the point with this administration, not with the Obama administration. We're not, as liberals, we're not against deportation. We're against the cruelty of the deportation. There's a big difference. Okay? It's a big, big difference. Okay? So after everything I read, everything I watched, after MAGA losing their mind, progressives celebrating, Black Americans worrying, FBA talking about here we go again, I realized this wasn't really a story about Birthright. It was a story about America. Because one Supreme Court opinion exposed just how divided we are in this country. One president has exposed just how divided we are in this country. Not just politically, emotionally, psychologically. We don't even process information the same way. We don't start with facts. We start with who we align with. Then we go looking for the facts that support what we already believe. That's backwards, and honestly, it's dangerous. Now, don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not telling you not to be concerned. I'm not telling you not to watch the Supreme Court, what they do next. I'm watching. I'm not telling you to ignore the facts that 4 justices appear willing to move in a direction that could fundamentally change citizenship clause in this country. That absolutely has my attention. But attention and panic are 2 different things. Yesterday did not erase the 14th Amendment. It did not strip us of our birthright. It did not strip people born here from their birthright to foreign parents, illegal parents. Yesterday settled that for all intents and purposes, the birthright citizenship. Okay? The conversation still is going to be had. People are still going to be protesting. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's time for Americans to stop letting politicians tell us what the Constitution says. Maybe it's time to stop letting influencers read Supreme Court opinions. Okay? I refuse to let people do stuff for me, so I do my own research. Okay? I don't agree with people most of the time. I usually stand on my own. The 14th Amendment is not just an amendment. It's part of our story, Black American story. It's part of the reason our citizenship was finally written into the Constitution after this country spent generations denying our humanity. That's why I refuse to let anybody cheapen this conversation with slogan. This deserves better than that. And maybe that's what disappoints me the most about yesterday. Not the court, us. We had an opportunity to have one of the most important constitutional conversations in years. Instead, most people chose sides before they chose understanding. Get them people out of here. We just want all them people out of here. All those people has made our country what it is. We should be able to do better than that. We are better than that. Okay? Whether you're conservative or you're liberal, black, white, FBI, it doesn't matter. The Constitution belongs to every one of us here. And if we're going to argue about it, if we're going to defend it or challenge it, then let's at least know what the fuck we're talking about and what we're arguing about. That's all I'm asking. Okay? That's all I'm asking. My job is to make people think, and this is what I think. I'd rather have a disagreement on facts than a disagreement based on fear. So, if you like my conversation this morning, please hit the like, share, and subscribe button, please. And thank you, TPP. I appreciate you guys. I may or may not be back here this evening. You know, I have a date. I have things I have to do. You know, hey, I got to do things. And Wednesday is the day I like to do certain things, if you know what I mean. So please hit the like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate it. And I'll have more content maybe tonight or tomorrow morning. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. But I appreciate it. Let me read some of the comments in the chat. I'm sorry. I said I was going to read comments in the chat, and then here I was finna get out the door and not read no comments in the chat. So I read a couple of comments in the chat. Okay. Preach. Okay. It said, this person says they don't want you to know that because of the point that they would owe us reparations, in which Lincoln did. But when he was murdered, his replacement reversed to 40 acres. Yes, they did. They reversed that 40 acres and a mule. Okay. It'll be difficult. See, the thing with reparations is this. The argument is we weren't born during slavery, so you don't deserve reparations. You guys say our ancestors deserve reparations. I say if you're going to give reparations, you need to give it to people who were born before the civil rights stuff came down. The civil rights acts came down, because those people who were born before 1969 or 68 or 9, those people were still not considered fully human, 2/3, 3/3, 3/5 human. So people who were born before 1968, I would be willing to say, hey, those people should get reparations. People born after that, I doubt very seriously they're going to give you reparations. You can keep asking for them, but unless you get an all-black Congress, Senate, and House to give you those reparations, you ain't getting those reparations, because you got to know how to count those votes. You have to have all of the black people plus some white people in both the House and the Senate in order to get reparations. And seeing as how most people don't think we should get reparations, we're not getting reparations. Just, I know how to count the votes. I'm not going to keep asking for something I know you're not going to give us. Y'all, this country don't even want to admit that they have that systematic racism still exists. They don't even want to admit that there's still systems in place that hold people back in this country. These people don't even want to admit that. They darn sure ain't going to admit to on somebody reparations. So you can piss on that. Okay. And I'm just saying, I don't believe they're going to do that. Okay. So should a pregnant woman arrive in the States and give birth to a U.S. citizen? Yes. I would do it. Y'all Supreme Court, the Supreme Court just said it was okay. Yeah, I would do it too. What you want us to say? It's been that way since the beginning. Okay. Ain't no sense in getting mad about it. It is what it is. Okay. White people don't owe blacks for reparations. They don't have the power or money to even pay it if they owed us. Maybe that might be true. I don't know. Okay. The 14th Amendment assured free slaves that their children would be American citizens. That's true. Okay. You goofy paste face always think you know what you're talking about when you're on your own to replace blacks. Ooh, wow. Okay. That's wild. Okay. No one anticipated birth tourism. Okay. Oh, well. See, here's the thing. The Supreme Court knows that people knows that there's birth tourism, although it's not a high percentage of people that do birth tourism. The Supreme Court knows that happens, and the Supreme Court said that was okay. So birth tourism is fine by me. Our Supreme Court people said it was okay. It is what it is, okay? You can be mad all you want to, but they said it was okay. What does it say? Bradford, okay, no. The last hope a citizen should have is help from the government. Yeah, okay. That's what the government is here for. Government is here to help the people. The government is here to facilitate the lifestyle and likelihood of people being successful in this country. Of course, you should depend on the government when you can. That's wild. What else? Ma'am, you'll never receive reparations because you're not owed anything. I don't think I asked for reparations, did I? If I asked for reparations, then that statement makes sense. But seeing as how I didn't, shut the fuck up. Next. Okay. We will receive reparations, and we will also be reclassified as native aboriginals. Okay. Let's see when that happens. I'll be more than willing to stand by your side when that happens. If it's not, whenever it happens. Okay, let's see. Executive order, no more pregnant travel to the United States. Maybe. How you gonna stop people who don't look pregnant? Makes no sense. Make no sense. Okay. Why are you tap dancing for the Democratic plantation? You forgot whose channel you're on. You're on HQ's channel. HQ don't get rattled by that kind of garbage. Plantation. I'm not on the plantation, but hey, it is what it is. If you think that, please grow up. Stop saying that dumb shit. Thank you. Okay. Then Google. Okay. I just gave you the door, walk through it. Okay. White racists always in FBA business. Yeah, sometimes it is what it is, right? MAGA's okay. You ain't gonna say pre-sister. So greetings from Germany. Greetings from Germany. This is me from southern United States. Hello, hello. Free handouts people ask for. The amount of free handouts people ask for is wild. What free handouts are we asking for, Piano Man for Life? Please answer that question. What free handouts are we asking for? And I could have sworn I wasn't talking about free handouts. Was I saying something about free handouts? Because I don't remember me saying nothing about no free handout. These people delusional or what? Some of them just say any old thing. Maybe it's just the voices in their head that make them say any old thing. When the hell did I say anything about handouts? Just dumb on a whole nother level. Let me see. What is it? Mark of Cain is white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Okay, I guess. Typical woe is me. I'm such a victim. How about you all just admit you put a white man in chains and a heartbeat? You can't accept equality. This is verbal diarrhea, full stop. The Woods, you need to really, really grow up because I think your medication ain't working. But please hit the like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys stopping over this early in the morning. But it is what it is. I may be back later on with more content. I appreciate everything, the comments and everything else. As you can tell, I have patience, but I don't have a lot of patience. And it is what it is. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you guys showing up. I appreciate you guys. And I'll see you later on.